Welcome to Pulmonology Read Aloud COPD Educational Slide Set Part 2. Let's start with the management and treatment of COPD in this set of slides given by the GOLD Guidelines. We are starting today with this table. Now this table gives us the commonly used medications in COPD, something that is really evolving and is changing as we speak. There have been several new medicines that have been added to treatment of COPD, and the treatment guidelines have changed from a time where once we were only dependent on bronchodilators to now where we know that COPD has inflammation involved, so an addition of anti-inflammatory therapy and phenotypic management of COPD, where there is a special role of steroids, mucolytics, and other therapy for specific COPD patients. As a medical practitioner, you must know that COPD treatment is basically divided into treatment related to bronchodilators, and these bronchodilators may be short-acting bronchodilators or long-acting bronchodilators. Other than these, anticholinergics are the mainstay of COPD treatment. So for a patient who's a mild COPD, anticholinergic therapy alone will be the treatment with or without a bronchodilator. Here also we've had a change with newer drugs like glycopyrrolate being introduced into the management protocols. There have been combination drugs where we use both anticholinergic and beta agonist, or combination drugs with long-acting beta agonists and steroids, as I said. Another very important drug is methylxanthine that is classically being used a lot for COPD, but now it is said to have a limited role and only in special circumstances, but not routinely. There is a newer combination called the triple combination in COPD, where all the three, the steroids, the long-acting muscarinic agents and long-acting beta agonists, they are all added in one single inhaler, which is a new revolution in COPD. Phosphodiesterase 4 inhibitors are another group of drugs that are recommended for COPDs more of bronchitis variants or the chronic bronchitis phenotype and mucolytic agents. So you need not remember all of these drugs by their name and by their onset of action, but it is good to know that the shorter acting agents like salbutamol, terbutaline, they have a duration of action of around 4 to 6 hours. So these act transiently but will not give a lasting effect. The long-acting agents work for around 12 hours as in the case of formoterol, 24 hours as in the case of a new compound called indaketrol, which is also now available in the market. We also have the other group of drugs, the anticholinergics, divided into short and long-acting. The short-acting ipratropium, we all know of it. We've used it in our nebulizers, acting for 6 to 8 hours. And the long-acting ones, of which tiotropium used to be one drug which was very, very frequently prescribed earlier with an onset of action and duration, quick onset and a duration of 24 hours or once a day therapy. And we now have newer agents available in India and world over like glycopyrronium, which again have a variable duration of action, and imiclidinium, again a compound which is really coming up as an ultra long acting agent. There have been a lot of combinations of short acting and anticholinergics like the very famous Duolin or salbutamol ipratropium kind of combinations. And nowadays, for maintenance of our patients, we use long-acting plus anticholinergics. So formoterol and glycopyrronium, or indaketrol and glycopyrronium, and the newer combination of Vilantrol, which has just been introduced in India with imiclidine. Methylxanthines is one group of drug which used to be used a lot. Patients used to get aminophylline injections, theophylline injections. Derifylline was one name which resonated with most COPD patients, but we really limit its role now because of high risk of cardiac side effects and toxicities. Something that has recently been introduced is the concept of steroids in COPD for patients who have an eosinophilic variety of COPD with a lot of inflammation, and so there are combination inhalers with the bronchodilators and inhaled steroids, or even with the triple combination, which is the newest available and has proved quite successful. Roflumilast is another drug which we add mostly for patients with more sputum production, and in the same way mucolytic agents like N-acetylcysteine and carbocisteine may have a role. So this is in a nutshell about this very important table that has been given in the GOLD guidelines, and it is good to know all these drugs because it has very good clinical implications. So according to the GOLD guidelines, in this slide it has been mentioned that inhaled bronchodilators are central to managing COPD patients. Only SOS short acting agents are needed for symptom control. We usually prescribe long acting agents for management. Combinations of long acting agents, LABA and LAMA, are good because they improve the lung function, they improve the patient's symptom, they improve the patient's status, and they reduce the exacerbations. And amongst these muscarinic antagonists, they have a greater effect on exacerbation reduction. So that is why drugs like tiotropium and glycopyrronium have a very important role in COPD. And combination therapy is the one that is being prescribed more now because it reduces risk of side effects, it reduces exacerbations. And as I said, tiotropium has good evidence of improving the effectiveness of pulmonary rehab and COPD control, but we have newer agents now along with tiotropium which are longer acting. This is the table which gives us all details about the anti-inflammatory therapy, and as I said, inhaled corticosteroids have got a new defined role in COPD. Patients who have eosinophilic variants of inflammation, patients who have an asthma COPD overlap kind of variant, and patients who are frequent exacerbators or have very severe COPD, inhaled corticosteroids are added in the treatment. So when they are combined with a long-acting bronchodilator, they are very effective in specifically reducing exacerbations. But remember this point that they are discouraged in a regular route because the risk of pneumonia is increased. So inhaled steroids increase the risk of pneumonia in COPD, but in addition to a LABA, they help reduce exacerbations. So nowadays a triple therapy is being promoted for patients who have more exacerbations, but we have to be wary about the pneumonia risk. Oral steroids, we do not prefer long-term oral steroids, but yes, we do give steroids orally when there are exacerbations. For PDE4 inhibitor, phosphodiesterase 4 enzyme inhibitor like roflumilast, patients with chronic bronchitis, as I mentioned, is where you may use it. Antibiotics also have some role. There is a role of long-term therapy like with azithromycin and erythromycin, so macrolide therapy, where for those patients who have frequent exacerbations, so they have been given over a year for patients and they have shown to reduce some exacerbation rates. And treatment with azithromycin, however, has also resulted in increased resistance, so only selected patients should be given this kind of therapy. Mucoregulators and other inflammatory agents do not have very good evidence, and there was some debate regarding the role of statins in COPD, but it has been clarified in these guidelines that statin like simvastatin does not prevent exacerbations, and so they do not have much role in COPD management. This is a good chart which is telling us what to consider when you're starting steroids. So for academic purpose, a really good chart to read, that steroids are to be considered for a COPD patients where there is more than one exacerbation of COPD in a year, which is moderate to severe, and their eosinophil counts, if they are more than 100 to 300 range, patients will do very well when inhaled corticosteroids are added to the regimen. But again, if a patient is added on inhaled corticosteroid for COPD, then we have to make sure that we taper it off if required. What is against the use of inhaled corticosteroids is risk of pneumonia, a lesser eosinophil count, and a history of TB. But what is for strong support is severe exacerbations, more than 2 exacerbations, and history of asthma. So when do we give an inhaled route of steroid to the patient or inhaled medication to the patients? We prefer inhaled route of medications for our patients in COPD. We have to choose the right inhaler for the patient. We have to help him choose it and guide him to the right technique of using the inhaler. What are the other treatments? Well, in some cases, like patients with alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, cystic fibrosis patients, there will be specific therapy. Antitussives, cough syrups, no real evidence of giving cough syrups in COPD patients, and vasodilators also there is no evidence. So these are not indicated. Something that's very important is pulmonary rehab, and pulmonary rehab is to be advised for all severe COPDs. It has an integrative role in COPD management. It improves the patient's quality of life, and it also reduces hospitalization if a patient has just recovered from a recent exacerbation. So pulmonary rehab is something that should be incorporated in the treatment. Patient's education and self-management is inclusive of giving him the right treatment. How about palliative care? Again, very severe COPD patients, we should try and avoid giving them neuromuscular blockers. We should avoid giving them too much sedation, too much pain management. But yes, there is some evidence that if a patient has end-stage disease, then these can be tried just to make the patient more comfortable. Oxygen therapy. The long-term oxygen for patients who have chronic hypoxia at rest or exertion is indicated. It will improve the survival of our patients. If a patient is a stable patient and he has a moderate hypoxemia or only an exercise induced hypoxemia or desaturation, then you need not give long-term oxygenation to your patient. And keep checking your patient's lung function, his physical status, and his 6-minute walk distance. Ventilatory support, we prefer non-invasive positive pressure ventilation or BiPAP support. That is our first line. It may improve hospitalization-free survival for patients, and domiciliary BiPAP can also be prescribed for patients who have a persistent hypercapnia, which we define as a PaCO2 more than 52 on the ABG. And for patients who are stable, there is not much role of surgery, but there are certain surgeries for patients with advanced emphysema. You must know these surgical modalities. One is LVRS or lung volume reduction surgery. It helps patients with severe emphysema, specifically those with upper lobe emphysema. Bullectomy for patients with huge bullas. Lung transplantation shown to improve survival in selected patients, and there are bronchoscopic interventions and newer interventional pulmonology techniques like implantation of valves, which can help to reduce the end expiratory lung volume, the endobronchial valves, lung coils, and vapor ablation that have been tried. So this is a nutshell of the management of COPD, and once we diagnose the patient, we have to first do the spirometry, check the gold category, give him an ABCD defined assessment tool assessment, start the initial management, ask him to stop smoking, vaccinate him, start the pharmacotherapy, start early physiotherapy as well, and manage the patient. Review him, review the symptoms, check for his CAP score and MMRC score as we discussed, see how many exacerbations he's having, and whether he needs pulmonary rehab, whether he needs oxygen, whether he needs BiPAP, vaccinate him, and keep adjusting. So this is how we manage a patient of COPD, and when we are managing such a patient, the goal is to reduce the symptoms, to reduce the risk. So reduce mortality, reduce exacerbations, and reduce the risk. So this is all from my end today for management of COPD. This part of the presentation of Goal Guideline set was towards COPD management, and it's a very, very important set which will help you understand how to go about diagnosing and managing it. Thank you, and see you next time.